Lesson of the Brain, the Phineas Gage Story. Phineas Gage is the most famous person to have ever survived severe damage to the brain. He proved the relationship between the personality and the function of the front parts of the brain. He was studied by Dr. John Harlow. In 1848, 25-year-old Gage was a railroad foreman in Vermont. While using an iron tapping rod to pack the explosive powder into a hole, the powder detonated, sending a rod hurtling upward, penetrating Gage's left cheek and tearing through his brain. The iron entered Gage's left cheek, pierced the base of the skull, went through the front of his brain, and exited at a high speed through the top of his head. The iron destroyed much of his brain's left frontal lobe, and Gage's once ever-tempered personality changed drastically. Gage survived the accident and immediately afterward was conscious and able to speak. He sustained no motor or speech impairments and his memory remained intact. After the accident, some have described Gage as restless, disrespectful, vulgar, irresponsible, and unreliable. Because of the significance of his injury, the scientists started studying the significance and role of the frontal lobe. The longitudinal study of the damage of his frontal lobe provided evidence that the brain affects personality and social behaviors. Gage taught us that complex functions such as decision-making and social cognitions are largely dependent upon the frontal lobe. One of the ethical issues was that Phineas' identity and medical information were not protected, nor was he ever consulted prior to the publication of the information. Today, patients are required to sign a release form prior to publication or release. While the considerable damage was localized to the left side of the frontal cortex, the impact on measures of the network connectedness between directly affected and other brain areas was profound, widespread, and a probable contributor to both the reported acute as well as the long-term behavioral changes. We now know it wasn't more significant than today's brain lesions. Results provide new insight into the remarkable brain injury experienced by this noteworthy patient and highlight the relationship we now know is extremely important to our knowledge of mental illness. This case study and the many studies it inspired in psychology has allowed researchers to gain a greater understanding of how the brain and nervous system influence human behavior.